And thank you for joining us for the 34th program by Governor John Bel Edwards, his monthly visit with us. And if you'd like to participate, the number again is 877-217-5757, wherever you are. And we know we have listeners all across Louisiana and in many parts of the United States. Governor John Bel Edwards has been in office since January of 2016, so he's crossed the 3-year mark, and this is an election year of 2019. And Governor, good to have you back for another year.
Well, thank you. It's good to be back, and I want to wish you and all the listeners a happy new year, and to you a belated happy birthday,
Well, thank
Jim.
you, Governor. Thank you very much. And the New Orleans Saints. You'll be in New Orleans this Sunday,
I
won't
will
you?
be, and I was last Sunday. It was an exciting game. The atmosphere was absolutely electric. I think the dome was extremely loud, and I think it's going to have to be again on Sunday. We beat the Rams earlier this year in the Superdome, but obviously they are a very good team, and of course this one is for the right to go to the Super Bowl. So I'm looking for a great crowd, a great atmosphere, and another Saints victory. But this is one that's we got to get off to a stronger start, a faster start, because if we do that against Los Angeles, it may not be 14-0 at the end of the first quarter. It may be 28-0.
Well, yesterday was Drew Brees' 40th birthday, and you as a former quarterback, about the same size as the Saints' great quarterback, I'm sure you're appreciative of how great he has been.
And continues to be, and the leadership qualities that he brings to the team, but also his contributions as a citizen in Louisiana have just been tremendous. And he is, a lot of times professional athletes are held up as heroes and role models when perhaps they shouldn't be. That is not the case with Drew Brees, and so I'm excited to have him as part of the Saints, and look forward to him taking the team to the Super Bowl and winning there in Atlanta in a few weeks.
Now, we're in the 26th day of the partial federal government shutdown. How is that affecting Louisiana?
Well, we've got a little less than 6,000 federal workers who are not being paid. Obviously, that's not good for them because even though the government shut down, that doesn't mean the mortgage doesn't come due and the groceries don't have to be bought and paid for. But the other part of that is many of them perform very vital functions. So it's a strain on TSA with inspections of individuals trying to get on airplanes and so forth. And obviously, my opinion is the government ought to be open. These workers ought to be working. They ought to be getting paid. And quite frankly, the border needs to be secured too. And good adult people who can be reasonable and sit down in a room ought to be able to figure something out. But we now have the longest shutdown in our country's history, and it's just not good for the country for this to happen. And so it's my hope that they'll sit down and figure something out sooner than later, get people back to work, and let's move on.
Okay. Now, today you have proclaimed this as Religious Freedom Day in Louisiana.
I did. I was actually requested by Senator Gerald Long from Natchitoches to do it, and he let me know that this has been done at the national level, I think, since 1996, every president, every year. And it goes back to something that happened in Virginia a couple hundred years ago, and I think Thomas Jefferson was the first one to do it there. So we just declared by a proclamation today being Religious Freedom Day in the state of Louisiana to match what they're doing at the federal level. I think it's important. It's a right that's enshrined in both the U.S. and the state constitution. So I'm glad that Senator Long brought it to my attention and we were able to issue that proclamation today.
How much does faith play in your world, in your life?
Well, look, I think it's a huge part of who I am, and I will tell you it's a big part of my marriage with Donna and so forth. And it's really important because the teachings, of course, I'm a Catholic Christian, and the teachings there that emphasize social justice are really important to me, and so. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, but I actually was interviewed over the summer by American Magazine, which is the Jesuit publication, and that came out just a few weeks ago. But for anybody out there who's interested in the role that faith plays in my life, I would refer them to that because it's a lot more detail there than I would be able to go into here with you, other than just tell you it is the central part of my life and a big part of my relationship with Donna and with my kids. And Donna and I start every morning in prayer, and we pray for people by name. As a consequence of getting older, the list of people we pray for who are sick it seems to get longer every single day.
Well, Louisiana is a Catholic enclave, not a majority, but a distinct minority, and some cities like Lafayette are among the most Catholic in the United States.
Yeah, and I'm never without a church to attend when I travel across the state, and for that reason, I've actually got a pretty long streak going now of several years where I have not missed Mass, and that's probably the longest in my life. And so there's a lot of pressure on me. I don't want to miss now, and so when we schedule our trips around the state, or even if we're traveling the country, let's say I'm going to the National Governors Association in New Mexico, which is what I did last summer. My staff now knows to find that nearest Catholic church and give me all of the Mass times so I can figure out how we're going to get to Mass.
How do people in Louisiana react when they look in the pew next to them and there's the governor of Louisiana?
Well, normally it's pretty reserved until such times as we exchange the sign of peace, and at that point in time, we get a chance to talk, and I always enjoy going to different churches and experiencing Mass in different places and so forth, and being with different people, and we've always been very well received, and so it's a lot of fun for us. But it does strike people. I think it catches people by surprise whenever they look over and they see that I'm sitting next to them.
Well, I think you are the fourth Catholic to be governor of Louisiana, starting with Edwin Edwards, and then followed by Kathleen Blanco and Bobby Jindal.
Yeah, third in a row, I guess.
Third in a row, and at one time, you had to be a Protestant from North Louisiana to be governor of our state. There was a succession of those for about a century, but things have changed. Now it's
Yes, sir.
Being a Catholic from South Louisiana seems to be the ticket to the governor's mansion. Go to Anthony in Metairie. Anthony, good afternoon. You're on the air with Governor John Bel Edwards.
Greetings and salutations, most noble governor. It's good to hear you.
Thank you, Anthony.
I was hoping, I noticed that the last time that there was a session in the House of Louisiana, the representatives voted against a minimum wage. I was wondering what the next plan is. Will we get a minimum wage in Louisiana? When will it happen, and how much will it be?
Well, Anthony, as you might remember, when I ran for office, I said I was committed to increasing the minimum wage in Louisiana. I remain committed, continue to work with the legislature and other folks around the state to try to make this a reality. The fact of the matter is it hasn't been raised since 2009. I think Congress has pretty well announced they're out of the business, and if we're going to raise it, we're going to have to do it ourselves. And we're just one of 5 states that don't have their own minimum wage, and $7.25 in 2019 is not enough. And as you know, I have planned a modest but meaningful increase to $8 an hour. Would be effective under my plan on January the 1st of 2020, and a year later go up to $8.50. So that's what I'm looking to accomplish. We're going to continue to work hard. The vast majority of people in Louisiana support it. We've not been able to get the legislature to vote for it. I think that's a mistake. And if you just look around the country, the most conservative states are voting in increase in minimum wage. Arkansas, a neighbor to the north of us, they've actually gone on January 1st of this year to $9.25, up from $8.50. And I just told you we're still down at $7.25. So I just think we can do better, and we would have fewer people living in poverty. But it's just the right thing to do. And look, I would rather Congress did this, but it's clear that they're not, and so we should.
In Arkansas, as you know, $9.25, now $2 more, so that means a minimum wage worker in Arkansas receives more than $4,000 a year if they work 40 hours a week. than a minimum wage worker in Louisiana.
Yeah, and what their experience has been, at least thus far, is every increase in the minimum wage in Arkansas has actually been met with an increase in employment, not a reduction in employment. And so I just think it's the right thing to do, and the experience in other states has been positive with these modest increases, which is where I am, and we're going to continue to work for this. And I really urge the legislature to work with me, and let's get this done.
And Arkansas, like Louisiana, is a state that has evolved, now a Republican governor and a Republican legislature. But we have a Republican-dominated legislature, a Democratic governor. But the business lobby here is considered to be very strong, and so far they have not budged on this issue.
They have not, and obviously that's one of the big obstacles that we have. But if you look at Arkansas, for example, that's the home of Walmart, and I don't think Walmart pays anybody the federal minimum wage anywhere, and so it's the right thing to do, and I encourage my friends in the business community to step forward, and if they've got specific concerns that we can address while we increase the minimum wage, then I'm open to that. But I'd really ask them to work with me, and let's get it done.
Alyssa in St. Charles Parish. Hi, Alyssa. You're on Ask the Governor with John Bell Edwards, our governor. Hi, Alyssa.
Hi, good afternoon, Governor.
Hi, Alyssa.
Hi, I'm an LCSW, and about 3 years ago, you spoke at our NASW conference, and I was there. So it was exciting to have you there.
Thank you.
I'm calling because I'm a woman-owned business, and I do mental health rehab. And for the last year and a half, I had a contract with Louisiana Healthcare Connect. And there was a certain point where I was having difficulty getting financial reimbursement from them, and they looked to see what was going on, and they found that my NPI was a multi-purpose facility versus a mental health clinic, which I was able to fix very quickly. But they claimed that they needed to terminate the contract and that they couldn't recontract with me because their panel's closed and they're not allowed to recontract. And I tried to, say you're not really recontracting. I'm the same company, and they wouldn't.
Now, listen. When you say they, are you talking about the Medicaid office at the Department of Health, or are you talking about Louisiana Healthcare Connections?
No. I'm talking about the Louisiana Healthcare Connect. They said to me, well, the state has told us that we're not allowed to if you fixed your NPI number, it means we'd have to write a whole new contract.
Okay. Alyssa, what I want you to do is stay on the phone. Micah will get your information, and I can have somebody call you. I can tell you that there was some growing pains when behavioral health was added to the Medicaid program. It actually happened in December of 2015. And then when we expanded Medicaid in July of 16, that expansion then took that forward. But the original procurement, when we got the 5 MCOs, Louisiana Healthcare Connections is one of them, happened before behavioral health was covered by the Medicaid program. So there were some growing pains. I think we have made a number of adjustments since then that have smoothed the way for many of the challenges that you're talking about, but maybe not all of them. And this is going to be further addressed in the next procurement that we will do over the course of this year for the managed care organizations that are going to administer the Medicaid program. But as for your specific situation, obviously I'm not mindful of that, and I can't respond to it. But if you'll give your information to Micah, we will make sure that the appropriate people from the department and or Louisiana Healthcare Connections gets back with you.
Thank you very much, and hang on the line, Alyssa, and we will get to you. 877-217-5757 is your number. Dean in Plaquemine. Hello, Dean. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hello, Governor. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, Dean.
Yeah, I work for Chafalaya Basin Keeper. You probably heard about our group. And I'm calling about the violations by Bayou Bridge Pipeline. You mentioned on another radio show that environmental laws will be enforced. And we've been reporting violations by Bayou Bridge.
All right.
Dean, thank you for the call, and I'm not sure which violations that you're talking about. I know that there remains some litigation in place, I think, in two different courts, one in St. Mary Parish, where there's an incident involving a parcel of land over which the pipeline is to be built, and I think there's a fractional ownership interest there and some question about that, and I know that there are some other litigation pending, but I think that if there are alleged violations by Bayou Bridge, that's the place to bring it up. What I will reaffirm is my commitment to make sure that all of the refineries situated in South Louisiana along the river will continue to be able to get their supply of oil. And there is no safer way to do it than a properly constructed, properly maintained pipeline. You can't do it by truck. You can't do it by rail. As safe, and so that's my commitment. But we're going to do it in a way that meets all of the requirements imposed by law, and that is as safe as it can possibly be. And if there are allegations that the company is violating the law in some fashion or another, then obviously those need to be brought into litigation that's pending.
877-217-5757 is your number, and we'll go back to the phone lines in just a moment. But a question about the tariffs that the president has imposed. How have they affected Louisiana? Is there a concern about this?
Well, there is. And in fact, earlier this week, I was with the president when he addressed the American Farm Bureau Federation. And he talked about it because it's having a particular impact on agriculture. Because of the trade dispute with China especially, which is a huge market for our agricultural products. And in Louisiana, this played out primarily as it relates to soybeans. Really just lost a major part of the market, and there was no market for soybeans this year for many of our farmers, some of whom actually had to plow up soybeans in their field. That obviously is tough on our farmers. The president indicated he's committed to wrapping up those negotiations as soon as possible so that he can make sure that we have fair trade but free trade and fair trade. And so if we can just get past the trade war, if you will, the tariffs and retaliatory tariffs, and get back to where we have a reliable market for our products, I think that's going to benefit everyone. The president indicated he's committed to doing that, and then the clock is now running on the next set of tariffs. And so I think China and the United States are back at the table negotiating, and I'm hopeful and optimistic that this is going to get it resolved. But the tariffs have had an impact. I don't know if you remember, but I said this before. In July of last year, Bloomberg said of all 50 states, Louisiana stood to lose the most from a protracted trade war. And that's because of agriculture, not just what's grown here, but 60% of the nation's grain gets exported through our ports and along the Mississippi River. Also, we're importing aluminum and steel. The price of those materials went up. And finally, aluminum and steel, but particularly steel, is a huge construction component in our chemical and petrochemical manufacturers. So those facilities, especially all the LNG that we have coming online. So for all of those reasons, we stood to lose the most. I sent a letter to the president in July pointing that out and asking him to bring this to a prompt resolution. And then I was able to speak to him about this in Bedminster, New Jersey, when I went up on the criminal justice reform issue. So he's certainly mindful of it, and I think he's optimistic he's going to be able to get this done, and we won't continue to have these adverse impacts going forward.
Chris in Baton Rouge. Hello, Chris. You're on Ask the Governor with Governor John Bell Edwards.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call.
Hi, Chris.
My question is dealing with the extremely high insurance rates in this state. What steps are being taken to help bring those insurance rates down?
Oh, Chris, thank you very much for the call. And you know there are a number of reasons that are given for those rates. One of which is the condition of our roads and bridges. And obviously, we're doing what we can to properly maintain our transportation infrastructure, given the limited resources that we have. We also have to have more capacity projects because it's pretty clear that the more congestion you have on the roads, the more accidents you're going to have as well. So we have to address that. Years ago, we did away with the Insurance Rating Commission, and I'm not sure if you did a comparison of how rates increased before and after, there might be a lesson to be learned there. But high insurance premiums is something that I've heard about. And of course, it's been a situation I think in our state for quite some time, and working to see what we can do to lower those rates. I think if you look across the country, I read a report the other day that showed that in the last 10 years or so, the state that had the most success, if I remember the report correctly, because I certainly don't have it in front of me, in lowering the rates was the state of California. And they did it through a regulatory approach, but they were able to achieve the biggest reductions in insurance premiums in the country.
What's this about you running in a marathon on Saturday?
Well, okay, I'm not running in a marathon, but the Louisiana Marathon is happening this weekend, and on Saturday morning, I will run the 5K portion of that, and I look forward to it. We've got a number of folks from the office who are going to do that, and we also are participating in Ainsley's Angels, where we will be pushing some disabled kids in a stroller for the race. Anyway, we're looking forward to it. I hope that the weather is better than is forecasted, because otherwise it's going to be a pretty tough morning to do that run.
You have any goal as far as time?
No, I don't. First, I've never run pushing a stroller where you can't use your arms or anything like that. But my goal is to finish it in one piece and enjoy myself.
Last week there was an announcement, Georgia Pacific,
Yeah.
700 jobs lost in the Baton Rouge area. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so Georgia Pacific announced that I think it's mid-March, in a couple of months, that they're going to close a portion of that facility, and the portion they're going to close was really making copy paper. And the demand for copy paper globally has just decreased to the point where they couldn't sustain that operation. It's sort of instructive to see that the other part of the plant they're going to keep open, and I think there are about 300 employees doing this, is for toilet paper and paper towel and that sort of thing, the paper products that remain in demand. And so we are working extremely hard through the Workforce Commission, through the Louisiana Economic Development, to make sure that we identify all of those individuals who want to continue to work, and that they get married up with employers in this area who are looking for workers, because there are plenty of those right now as well. For example, IBM's holding a job fair this weekend looking for 75 workers. There's 800 construction jobs coming to St. James Parish with South Louisiana Methanol that we announced just this month, and over 400 new permanent jobs that are going to be open there. And so the economy remains very strong. In fact, the GDP is currently the highest it's ever been. We continue to get investment in, and so there's going to be plenty of opportunities. We just have to make sure we marry these people up with those opportunities, and I'm optimistic we're going to be able to get that done.
No surprise that we as a people are using less paper. In the old days, before email and iPhones, we communicated in a different way. Do you still get letters, handwritten letters?
Yeah, quite often, note cards and cards and letters I do get directed to my attention, and I get to read those, and many come in, and obviously they go to constituent services if they are asking for help with a specific issue. Otherwise, if it's just a comment about something going on in state government or whatever, then I'll get the letters. But I spend a fair amount of my time reading those letters, and I certainly respond to as many as I can. And I enjoy that. And by the way, the letters come from all over the country. I guess because of the internet, people all over the country knows what happens everywhere else, and so I frequently get letters from people in other states as well.
People asking you to run for president?
No.
877-217-5757. Mike in New Orleans. Hello, Mike. You're on the air with Governor Edwards.
Yes, sir, Mr. Edwards. I've been hauling freight since 1969, and so naturally I've seen building the highways and everything and the great congestion we have now with 24-hour traffic.
Yes, sir.
And I've always questioned, on the other side of Baton Rouge, they built all them beautiful 8-lane roads and stuff. And what I always didn't understand is why somebody hasn't noticed the GNO Bridge where 3 lanes go down to 1 and that little turn there.
First of all, Mike, thank you very much for the call. And hauling freight since 1969, you probably know better than anybody where we have traffic issues and congestion and whether we have maintenance issues or capacity issues. I will tell you, notice was taken a long time ago of the situation here in Baton Rouge as you travel east across the bridge, how the through traffic was forced into one through lane there. And we are rectifying that now. We actually have construction on the way to realign the exit and off ramp so that we can do that. We cannot petition the federal government to close an off ramp, however, until we have another one that will service that same area. So we're in the process of realigning that now and requesting that permission and doing it in a way that won't adversely impact the neighborhood, but will keep at least 2 through lanes of travel open at all times coming across the bridge. So we are actually working on that as we speak.
Stewart in Baton Rouge. Thank you, Mike. Stewart, you're on the air with the governor.
Well, thank you, Jim, Governor, and to the listeners. Governor, I think you're doing a great job under the circumstances. Let me get to the point. Governor, related to public education, K through 12 specifically in the state of Louisiana, I'm a former public school educator. I find when I continue to communicate with those that are still in the landscape, particularly teachers, they are horrifyingly frustrated at the lack of motivation by too many of our students in the system. I think the system needs to employ some type of motivational.
All right.
Well, Stuart, first of all, thank you for your call and thank you for having been an educator. Obviously, we have a number of issues that we need to tackle with respect to education, as does every state. Seems like we have more than our fair share. One of the things that I'm trying to do to make sure that we have a motivated teacher in every classroom, and that is for the first time in 10 years actually have a pay raise for our teachers, and looking at $1,000 per teacher or other certificated person in our school system and $500 per support worker, because I think that's the number one ingredient. And then, of course, with respect to whether the students come to school motivated and whether they do or don't, how you then motivate them once they are at school, obviously that's an important factor too. And we are looking for schools and school districts and principals to be enterprising and imaginative and come up with things that work. And I don't necessarily have any good ideas, but I know if you've got a motivated student and a motivated teacher, that's a pretty good recipe for success.
Thank you, Stuart. Melissa in Denham Springs. Hello, Melissa. You're on Ask the Governor.
Hi, Governor. Thanks for everything that you're doing. You and Donna both make me very tired because y'all are involved in every aspect of Louisiana, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa.
But I want to ask, when will we be able to view by representatives' names in special session or regular session if and how they voted, yes or no? Because right now you can only vote it by bill or day by day, so you can't vote it by to see if that representative was there and what they voted for unless you go bill by bill.
Yeah, and I don't know of any other way to do that. That is actually part of the legislative website. They have it in the House and the Senate. And as a bill is taken up in committee or on the House floor or the Senate floor and a vote occurs, then that vote gets recorded and it's going to show yay, nay, or absent. And I don't know of another way to track that other than looking for the particular instrument that you're interested in and following that instrument. And it would be very difficult to do it some other way because, and look, I was in the legislature for 8 years. You get up and you go to the restroom, or someone comes from your district and they want to visit with you and you go out to visit with them, you're going to miss some votes. You just are. And at the end of the day, Some of those missed votes get so-called corrected, where they go back, and so long as they don't change the result, they can vote yes or no. And so I don't know of a better way to do it than what they're currently doing, and so I would just encourage you to continue to track this by bill number, and you know, if there's a better way to do that, then contact us or contact the legislature. I quite frankly, Melissa, I'm not sure of a better way to do it.
Mai in Belle Chase. Mai, you're on the air with the governor.
Hi, Governor. My name is Mai. I'm a wife of an active duty U.S. Coast Guard Sector NOLA here in Algiers Point. I really don't know the reach of your office or if there's anything you can do for the men and women of the U.S. Coast Guard.
All right.
Well, thank you very much for the call. And by the way, thank you for your sacrifices as a spouse of someone who wears the uniform to protect us in this country. Something that my wife did for a while, and I have tremendous respect for military spouses. And obviously we got disconnected before you expressed a specific concern, but I'm sure it has to do with the shutdown and the lack of paycheck that you may be suffering through right now. And I will tell you that is tragic. It is unnecessary. It is not in the country's best interest. We need to reopen the government. We need to put people back to work, and we need to pay them, especially the people like your husband who are involved in securing our country.
Mai in Belle Chase was asking about implications of the government shutdown, and this is having far-ranging consequences, including the SNAP program. Governor, how does that affect people in Louisiana who are depending on this?
So I think the authority for the U.S. Department of Agriculture to administer the SNAP program, or at least the funding, is cut off as of January the 20th. So what they're going to do is, if you are a SNAP beneficiary, your card is going to be loaded for February by January the 20th. And you have to budget, because that is not an additional benefit. That benefit that you get is going to have to carry you all the way through the month of February. So we're encouraging people to be mindful of that. The card should be loaded any day now, but not later than January the 20th. But budget for that additional increment to get you all the way through February, because right now we don't know beyond February the next time this is going to happen should the government not reopen. And the other thing is, if you have an interview scheduled in order to renew your eligibility, or if you've got documents that you're supposed to be turning in, make sure you keep your appointment for the interview. Make sure you turn in your documents. You know, you asked me earlier what other impacts we've had. I found out that we've actually got 333 federal workers who have applied for unemployment insurance benefits because of the layoff, and that's as of this morning. So it may actually be more than that now, and I don't know what that number is going to grow to. But since I had that information, I wanted to kind of give you an update on the answer that I gave you to your question earlier.
877-217-5757. James in Longview, Texas. Hello, James.
Well, hi there, Jim, and good afternoon, Governor.
Hi, James. Good to have you again.
Good to hear you. Anyhow, I'll get right to it. I read in the news where your lieutenant governor is encouraging international visitors to come to Louisiana, and I know that's always a good thing, and you don't care where they come from, but in the article it didn't state if you were especially hoping to draw visitors from a certain area, say Canada, South America, Europe. Do you have anything in mind?
Well, we don't, but we know that tourism continues to perform very well across Louisiana, but obviously particularly in New Orleans, where we have more direct flights. We now have direct flights from London and Germany. And so, that wasn't the case just a couple of years ago. So we do have more foreign travelers who have an easier time of getting directly into the state of Louisiana. And the fact of the matter is, James, we accept tourists from everywhere, including Longview, Texas. So anytime you want, please cross the border. Have a good time in Louisiana. You're not going to find better food, a better culture, a more unique history anywhere in the country. And that's why I think New Orleans and Louisiana does so well in terms of tourism. But I appreciate the work that Lieutenant Governor Nungesser is doing promoting our state. And I think, every now and then I pick up a magazine and I read an ad that's promoting Louisiana and tourism, and I think they're all really well done. And so I appreciate his work in promoting our state, and just look forward to continuing to have record numbers of tourists coming to Louisiana and obviously spending their money here.
At your appearance at the Baton Rouge Press Club last week, you were asked about sports betting in Louisiana. How is that looking right now?
Well, it looks really good. So I have my first sports bet I won this past Sunday with the governor of Pennsylvania. I know that's not what you're talking about. So I bet him a king
Saints
cake.
Eagles.
I bet him a king cake. He bet me a tasty cake, and so I'm expecting a tasty cake to come in the mail any day now. No, so sports betting, obviously the Supreme Court said that Congress couldn't limit it to just a couple of states. And so now it's open for states to adopt or not. What we know is if we don't adopt sports betting in Louisiana, we will lose revenue and gaming business to neighboring states that offer it. Now, the fact of the matter is the incremental revenue that comes directly from sports betting will be relatively modest. But the bigger impact will be that we will lose revenue we are currently getting because those same customers, those same individuals won't stop in a Louisiana casino. They'll keep going to a place that does sports betting and so forth. The legislature has actually commissioned a study on sports betting to figure out whether it should be implemented, and if so, how in Louisiana. That report has not come back yet. But I did indicate also at the press club luncheon last week that I would be open to a conversation about if we can identify what that incremental revenue is, tie it to early childhood education, because I think that's probably the most pressing need that we have for an additional investment at this time.
Do you think you would ever place a bet?
You know, I don't bet. I mean, I don't ever want to use the word never. But it's just not something that I do. I don't do video poker. And it's not a judgment against anybody who chooses to do those things. I just have never been one to put money in a slot machine or any of those things.
All right, Stephen in New Orleans. Stephen, good afternoon. You're on Ask the Governor.
Yes, hi. I'm calling because a year ago I got a letter from the saying that they overpaid me by $9,000 and they would like their money. And I couldn't understand really what they were talking about. But basically I talked to a lawyer. I also talked to Congressman Richmond's office. And basically everybody is telling me that because of the way the contracts with the road home are written, I owe them $9,000.
Well, Stephen, obviously, I don't know your particular situation, and you did cut out on me, but I think you got back to it. This is a road home issue,
yes,
where you're being told to repay $9,000, and I'm guessing that sufficient documentation may not have been submitted to show that all of the money that you received, or at least this is what they believe the case to be, was actually spent on your home. But if you would give your name and number to Micah, I will have someone call you to try to verify if that is in fact the situation, and what it is that you may be able to do to get out of this particular situation, if anything. I don't know what the facts are and so forth, but I will try to get somebody in touch with you to see if you're entitled to some relief.
Jerry in Metairie. Hello, Jerry. You're on the air with the governor.
Hello, Governor.
Hi, Jerry.
I want to say hi. I'm a professional musician. I played for you and Miss Donna's West Point reunion party last year. It was a great thrill for me. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Governor, I wanted to get your opinion on exploring our state, Louisiana, moving towards vote by mail.
Well, Jerry, first of all, thank you for the call, and I appreciate the question, and I appreciate the wonderful music that y'all were able to provide as well. Vote by mail is not something that I have ever really considered. I think it's probably worth a look and see what the experience has been in the states that do it. It does seem to me, if I recall, that on election night, in November, there were some states that weren't able to be called, and one of them was the state that voted by mail because the mail comes in over such a long period of time. So that may be a drawback, and I don't know what experience they might have had. You indicated it may be cheaper, and that may be true, or if there's some other issues with it. But it's something that probably ought to be looked at. I think we ought to look at anything, not necessarily trying to adopt everything because you can't. For example, I know in Maine they just went to rank order voting, and some people liked it and some people didn't. Other people do things like same-day registration. And I think we ought to always be willing to see, is there something we can do within reason that increases voter participation so that we have more of our citizenry exercising their option to vote. And so it's certainly something I'm willing to consider, and I can have a conversation with the Secretary of State, who is the state elections officer, by the way, here in Louisiana. And certainly it would be willing to talk to any legislator who thought that it might be the right thing to do in Louisiana. I just don't know, as I sit here in the studio today, that it is, but certainly that may be possible.
Now, are you satisfied, Governor, that flood control dollars for the state will be safe if the president uses an emergency declaration to build the wall on the southern border?
Well, if he uses the emergency declaration, then I'm not 100% comfortable because he's got to find the funding somewhere, and he would exercise the emergency as it appears and use funding through the Department of Defense. And the pot of funds that were most likely to be used were those that were appropriated by Congress to the Corps of Engineers to help states that had suffered disasters like ours in 2016, like Florida and Texas and Puerto Rico in 2017. So I'm encouraged because it appears that he is unlikely to do the emergency declaration as a way to fund his border security efforts along the border with Mexico. But should he go that route, it is my hope that he would not take that pot of funds. I know that he's heard from congressmen and senators from all over the country that would not be a wise thing to do. And by the way, I've talked to our congressional delegation, most recently Congressman Graves, and he assures me that that's not in the cards. So as I sit here today, I don't worry about it, but if he were to declare the emergency, then I would have some concerns perhaps.
Governor, thank you for joining us, and thank you for participating and listening. And the governor will return to the hot seat next month, February 20th at this time. So until then, for Governor John Bel Edwards, I'm Jim Inkster. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned.